Hello, Cleveland. We are back. It's the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Jackson McCurry. It's been a little bit since we've been able to sit down and do a podcast, but we are back. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Anthony Jokey. Anthony, how are you, Ben?
I'm doing good. This summer is flying by already, which is good because that means football is right around the corner. I can't believe it's already after July already. So um, training camp's right around the corner, but as everybody knows, Browns news never ends.
Right. We are like 23 days away from started training camp. There's a couple news items we were expecting between the end of minicamp and the beginning of training camp, and one of those happened on Wednesday, July 6th. We were recording on July 7th. Anthony, is officially the end of an era with the Cleveland Browns as Baker Mayfield was officially traded after months and months and months of speculation, going all the way back to the end of the season. Baker was officially traded to the Carolina Panthers on Wednesday for a 2024 conditional fifth round pick that can become a fourth round pick if he plays in 70% of the snaps. Anthony, we started this in 2017. And at that point, the Browns were looking for a long-term answer at quarterback. They passed on it in 2017. And then, once we started our second year of the podcast, they draft Baker number one overall. And we went on this roller coaster ride these last 4 years with him. And what a crazy ending to it all, from the end of the last season, practically the entire season last year with the shoulder injury and everything. And then, the speculation about what the Browns would do at quarterback. Then they ultimately trade for Deshaun Watson. And then we were just waiting for, where was Baker going to go? Were the Browns going to trade him? Were they going to hold on to him and wait for the right trade partner? They did. I think people might have expected we'd get more, but I think at the end of the day, both sides agreed that it was just time to move on. And the fact that Baker gave up some money as well to make this happen just goes to show that he did not really want to be in Cleveland anymore, and he just wanted a fresh new start, much like the Browns did as well.
Yeah, you figured, after the moves the Browns made to get Watson, that at some point this was coming. Um, I think with all the other quarterback movement this offseason, um, there really wasn't too much of a market for Baker, um, which is, after the playoff win, you'd think that's like absolutely crazy, right? But the way you talked about it being a roller coaster, it's what it was. From his opening, um, his first game that he played in against the Jets on Thursday Night Football, which was the Browns' first win in, was it 700 days? Was that
Something like that? It was
yeah?
a crazy amount.
It was a long time, but that place was electric that day. Because I was there. That was pretty fun. To the rest of that season after Hugh Jackson was let go, and the stuff against Cincinnati, and uh, it was just a roller coaster for 4 years, and hopefully, um, now that he's gone, there maybe be some stability. Who knows? There's still a lot of questions to be answered with that, but the era of Baker is, like you mentioned, officially done. It's crazy to think about that this is where we're at. Just let's see, about 18 months after being the Steelers in the playoffs. So um, it's crazy how things quickly change. I know the NFL stands for not for long, but this is certainly on the extreme side of it, I guess. And the way it unfortunately shook down at the end. Um, it's no shock that he definitely wanted to move on and get out here. I think the Browns wanted that as well. There's no way that he could have been on this team when training camp started. I know he wanted to show up, and the Browns wouldn't have expected him to, but just for everything to be all done now, and the Browns can go into training camp with still some questions based on other factors that um, we're not going to talk about tonight, but everybody knows what they are. Um, to to be able to go into training camp without him here, I think it was the goal on everybody's side. The Browns, Baker, his agent, and everybody. So it's just nice that this is all put to bed. But now, Jack, we get to talk about for the next couple months. The Browns will be maybe playing him in the opener. I'm not sure if he'll be the starting quarterback for Carolina for the opener, but that's who they play, and it's certainly possible that they could be facing off against Baker Mayfield in Week 1.
Yeah, that'll be crazy. Something to think about as we inch closer towards the opener on September 11th. But I just want to go back to something you said. You mentioned 18 months ago in January, the Browns beat the Steelers in the wild card round, and they go to Kansas City, almost beat the Chiefs if it hadn't been for just the whole Rashard Higgins, Daniel Sorensen thing at the goal line, the helmet to helmet hit and the fumble, and then Baker throws an untimely, I think it was an interception late in the game, and then obviously Chad Henne's heroics, which still just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, and I don't think it'll ever go away.
And I'm sorry, we beat Buffalo too. I'm fully confident of that one.
I think we could have beat Buffalo as well. That would have been a good game. But just going back to that, and then everything that's happened in the last 18 months, even back the last calendar year, I think this time a year ago, we were talking about, we were expecting a Nick Chubb extension, a Denzel Ward extension, and then we were still talking about a Baker Mayfield contract extension. And we were all thinking like he's going to get 35, 40 million, maybe even more than that. I know Josh Allen signed his deal right around this time a year ago, and we were wondering like, well, what's Baker going to sign? Well, the Browns didn't even offer him a contract extension. And I remember like the more we got into camp, the more I was like, this is an analytics driven front office. They're going to want to see more. I don't blame them for not pulling the trigger on the extension. And honestly, now after everything that happened, I'm glad they didn't, because we seen, the shoulder injury was what it was, but it was like Baker started reverting back to the 2019 Baker, where he was very erratic. He was getting happy feet. He just wasn't accurate. It was going back to the same mistakes that he was making under Freddie Kitchens. And it was like the Baker Mayfield we saw last year. Is that just what Baker Mayfield's going to be now, Anthony? You think he's just an average quarterback who's going to show glimpses of, above average to elite play, but then he's going to show those mediocre games where he's just looking like an average to below average quarterback? Do you think he's just going to be that, where he's so up and down, it's going to be a roller coaster with him no matter where he goes? Or do you think if he goes to a place, and I wouldn't even call Carolina that place for him, but say he lands in a spot where it's stable for him, do you think we will see an average quarterback, or do you think Baker will eventually pull out and be maybe an above average quarterback again? The times we've seen that, like the end of 2018 and the end of 2020, where he showed like the flashes of being a franchise quarterback.
I think it depends on a lot of things. Obviously it depends on, where he ends up if he doesn't stay in Carolina. I think the right coach can, and you saw what Stefanski was able to get out of him in, the 2020 season. I think the right coach can, help minimize some of the errors that he makes. But you asked about it being a roller coaster. I think that too. If he just has, and I could see him totally having an up and down career. Maybe he plays 2 years above average, and then, he reverts back to, 2021 Baker, the following season, and then maybe he goes and has a season where, he resembles the second half of 2020, where he played extremely well. I think it's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys with Baker, wherever he ends up. And look, that kind of quarterback, Jack, lasts a long time in the NFL. I mean, look how long, Ryan Fitzpatrick has stayed around, before finally retiring. I don't want to put that projection on Baker, but, that kind of average play to where, you you see some incredible things, but then you see some really bad mistakes. And I just think that's who he is right now. And I think that's why, the Browns decided to go out and get Deshaun Watson. They wanted some more consistency at that spot. And, wherever Baker ends up, it's going to be on Baker, on the coach, to get the best out of him. And I'm not sure if that's in Carolina or where that might be. But, from now on, I just think it's, like you mentioned, it's going to be a roller coaster. And who knows? Like I said, he could have a couple. I don't want to say like MVP type seasons, but above average to elite, and then revert back to some of his terrible ways. I just think it's going to be a lot of peaks and valleys, and that's just who he is as a player.
For sure. I think he's in that Jimmy Garoppolo, like Alex Smith range. I think when you look at quarterbacks, like he's never going to be the elite, but I don't think he's ever going to be like in the Sam Darnold category for sure. And, it's funny because those two were the two quarterbacks that I think the Browns were ultimately deciding on. I think there may have been people in the room having a say for Josh Allen, but now the Carolina Panthers have both the first and third overall picks in their quarterback room, and they added another quarterback in this draft as well as Matt Corral that they're pretty high on. But yeah, it's just going to be interesting to see what happens with Baker. Like I don't have any ill will towards him. Like, yeah, he soured on me towards the end. It's the way he was playing on the field, B, the way he was acting to the reporters, throwing Kevin Stefanski under the bus. This the stuff now that's starting to come out, leaking out through the media reports and stuff. Just, I think the Baker thing just soured on the way he acted, soured in the locker room. Obviously, the media never really bought into what he was saying, but it's just gonna be interesting to see what happens, especially with Carolina. Like, it already sounds like this is just going to be a 1-year audition for him to the other 30 teams in the league. I'm not counting the Browns, obviously, because I would have said 31, but because the Charlotte Observer is already reporting that they told Matt Corral about the trade, but they told him that they are still banking on him being the quarterback of the future. So Baker's pretty much got to come in and prove to the rest of the league that he belongs in the league as a starter. That is if he beats Sam Darnold in camp, which it sounds like that's going to be a competition as well. So, let's see if Baker gets the chip on his shoulder again and proves it to everybody else that he does belong. And then if he balls out, he'll go get paid next offseason to a team that needs a quarterback.
Yeah, I even think that if he doesn't, completely ball out this year, if he, doesn't beat out Sam Darnold, or the Panthers decide that they just want to, see what Corral has instead of, say they get to like week 8 and week 9 and Carolina is like 3-5 or, 2-4 or, something like that. Maybe, that's they decide to go the route of their rookie and see what he has. And, they just move on from Baker and Darnold the year after that. Baker's going to get a contract somewhere next year. I don't know where that would be, but we repeatedly see top draft picks, quarterbacks, get second chances, second and third and fourth, and even fifth chances. Across the NFL, you look at Marcus Mariota and now Carson Wentz, Trubisky. So I mean, there's certainly when you're a high draft pick at the quarterback spot, you're more likely to get chance after chance. So, if Baker is a really good citizen down there in Carolina and things go well, I'm not even talking about the play. I'm just talking about like all the off-field stuff and all that kind of, things he hasn't been exactly great at over the last 4 years. If all that goes well, I'd certainly see him getting a contract somewhere else. I don't know where that would be, but these, like I said, these quarterbacks continue to get second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. So I could definitely see him being around in the NFL for a while. Maybe he'll find a spot where it'll work for him eventually.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks that continue to get chances, like you said, even the backups. Like, I think, was it Mary Kay Cabot said it on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, saying Colt McCoy continues to get chance after chance to be a backup in this league. And we all thought after he left Cleveland that he was going to be done. And that was a decade ago now, which is crazy to me that it's been 10 years since Colt McCoy was a member of the Browns, but he's still a backup in this league. So that just goes to show, if you're good, if you can do your job on the field as well as be a professional off the field, which Baker, we all know, needs to improve in that aspect, that he's going to have a spot in this league for the next decade. And that's, obviously barring injuries as well, because we already know Baker's coming off the shoulder injury. He's had his fair share of other injuries so far in his first 4 seasons. So, but Baker, I think, does belong in this league, and he will definitely be around. And whether it's Carolina or wherever he ends up, I know you mentioned Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz can be out of Washington after this year. We know they liked Baker this offseason. They just couldn't formulate the trade at the time because Cleveland didn't know about Deshaun Watson. So if that staff still stays in place at Washington after this year, Baker Mayfield could be a Commander in 2023 and beyond. But Anthony, Jason Lloyd of The Athletic wrote a really good story talking about Baker Mayfield and where everything went wrong. And there was interesting tidbits in that article. The biggest one was, we knew that there was a rift between Baker and Kevin Stefanski, especially after the Pittsburgh game when Baker called him out for, James Hudson being thrown out there one-on-one against TJ Watt, and Baker got absolutely obliterated because of it. But this goes back even further. And it seems, what Jason Lloyd's reporting makes it seem like Baker soured on Stefanski over the stupidest little thing. This was after the Patriots game when the Browns got demolished. I think it was like 45-7. Baker and Stefanski were supposed to have a meeting after the game, or the Monday after, and I think it was supposed to go over the offensive game film and everything. And Stefanski didn't go because he was meeting with Myles Garrett after Myles lashed out to the media about Joe Woods' lack of adjustments against New England. And I guess Baker got really annoyed by that. And it was like one of those things that we know how Baker can be petty towards like what the media says about him or what anybody says about him. I guess they said after that, Stefanski never missed another meeting, but privately was shined a glaring spotlight on his quarterback during film sessions every day after that. So it's like, that's one of those things, like, we know if Baker, somebody says something about Baker, he gets that chip on his shoulder and wants to prove people wrong. But it seems like that little thing seems so petty to me that if Baker got mad at Stefanski over that, it just makes me wonder, like, how their relationship was before that point, because it just seems so petty to me that Baker, if he really soured on Stefanski just because he missed the meeting when Stefanski was talking to one of the leaders of the team, like, why would Baker get mad over something like that?
I mean, probably like the leader of the team, to be completely honest.
Fair enough.
Even more so than Baker. This is what I was kind of talking about a few minutes ago. If Baker needs to or wants to have a career in the NFL, then these are the things in Carolina that he needs to do a better job at. I don't know how much this whole experience is going to humble Baker, but if he's able to, take in a big slice of humble pie and everything, and things go well in Carolina, and he learns that, from what it sounds like, not take things like, there's a point of taking things super seriously and being professional. I think there's another level after that to where, maybe it's considered crazy. I don't want to use that word, but something to that effect. I know you know what I'm trying to get at, but
yeah.
if he's able to learn to, just be professional about things and, not have like a reaction to, apparently what Jason Lloyd's reporting there. Those are the things that are going to go a long way for him in his career. If he's able to correct those, assuming like all this is true. So it's going to go a long way if he's able to not do those kinds of things, and hopefully he's able to. If he wants to stick around.
Another quote from Lloyd's article, it says that Mayfield was widely viewed as childish and immature. His behavior annoyed teammates and divided the locker room, and he was often difficult to coach. And then, like that last thing was so apparent to me because, I mean, he went through so many head coaches, so many offensive coordinators. They were always reshuffling the QB room, whether it was coaches or, backup quarterbacks and everything during his time. The dividing the locker room. I mean, Anthony, we've seen that coming after the Browns decided to move on and release Odell Beckham Jr. when you had players openly saying, well, we would welcome Odell back. And you could just tell after that point that it was very divided. People were not, showing good support for Baker. And this was going even after the season was over. There wasn't really any big support. I mean, Wyatt Teller showed support, Joel Bitonio, Nick Chubb, but that was it. No one else really showed like big time support for Baker being the long-term quarterback going forward. I remember John Johnson tweeting during the Packers game, why aren't they running the ball? I think some people liked Baker's swagger, his confidence, everything. And we all complimented him over that. Like when he got drafted after his debut against the Jets, so when he would take a big hit, he would stand back up and taunt the other player, the opponents. Like, I think it's good at the start, but I feel like if he's not playing well and he's still showing that confidence and that swagger and everything, and they're getting their tails kicked and he's not making good plays, like I think it just soured on teammates after a while. And I just feel like and especially after the shoulder injury, he was showing that he was more worried about himself. And I think the big payday that was, dangling in front of him, then he was more worried about helping the team. And Jason Lloyd even brought that up. What if he had sat himself out after the Houston game when he originally injured his shoulder? What if he had sat himself out after the Arizona game when he made it even worse? It seemed like Baker was more worried about himself than he was more worried about the team. Now, the Browns could have also been blamed for that as well, for not benching him and saying, hey, you're injured, we're going to go with Case Keenum. We had said at the time that both sides were to blame for that whole situation there with the shoulder injury, but it just seemed like Baker was more worried about himself and he wasn't being a team first guy. He was more being a me first guy.
I'm curious, and if after he sustained a shoulder injury, if he's out for like 4 to 6 weeks, like does all this even happen this offseason? Because if he comes back and plays relatively well and he's healthy and because obviously that shoulder affected him all year long, does this even happen? Like it's weird, interesting to go down that rabbit hole of thought process. So do the Browns even acquire Watson at that point? Do they give Baker an extension after the season? I guess we'll never know. But yeah, I mean, look, hopefully, like I said, hopefully Baker can mature and become a professional. And there's a lot of guys in this league that have made a living being really professional and being a backup quarterback, starting when they have to. Maybe not Chase Daniel. I know he's been in the league a long time and really hasn't played much and has made a lot of money. But you brought up Colt McCoy earlier. He's had to start every now and then. But he's just a backup quarterback. But he's been professional for many, many years now. you hope that's what Baker can do. Start if needed to be. Hopefully, the ego doesn't follow him down to Carolina. I know that's hard because he's such a big personality. You saw that back in his college days at Oklahoma. The Georgia game in the playoffs, the game at Ohio Stadium with planting the flag. Uh, the Kansas State stuff. So the Hugh Jackson stuff, his rookie year. So there's certainly a big ego and a big personality there, and I curious if this will provide the biggest ego check in the world for him. I think him eating a lot of the money on this deal to get out of Cleveland to go to Carolina maybe is the beginning of that, and maybe he realized that he needs to do a lot better himself. And look, you said earlier too, I have no ill will towards Baker. Like, I think he did great for this franchise. It was a roller coaster, but that playoff win is something I'll never forget. His first game against the Jets, I'll never forget. I remember talking about on this podcast that one throw he made against Carolina where he rolled to his left down into the end zone to Landry is one of the best throws I've ever seen a Browns quarterback make. So he has talent. If the talent can check the ego for him, I think that'll go a long way. I hope he does well. Just not week one. If he's the starting quarterback. Anyway, I'm not gonna sit here and root against him for the next 10 years. Yeah, obviously I want the Browns to do a better job than he does. Whoever the Browns quarterback is for years to come. If it's the Super Bowl and he's on the other team and the Browns are in it too, like obviously, you're rooting for the Browns. You're not going to be rooting for Baker in that situation. So, look, I have no ill will. Hopefully he does well down there, wherever he ends up after this season. He just needs to check that ego, and it'll go a long, long way for him. And I think he's, like I said, with eating up some of that money, I think he's starting to do so.
Yeah, I think he ate some of the. I think he gave up $3.5 million. I think he just did it because he just wanted the fresh start. And I think, yeah, he wanted out of Cleveland too. But I just think he wanted this all over with. I think he wanted to get to his new team and get ready for the season. And obviously, camp's looming. He's going to be competing against Sam Darnold. So I think he wanted to get in there, get the playbook, start learning the offense, and to get acclimated with his receivers and everything. Most notably, probably Robbie Anderson. He probably wants to. They probably should clear that up before camp starts. That whole, I think it was a misconception. I think Anderson was defending Darnold when the reports were out there that the Panthers were interested in Baker, and he responded no, he didn't want to do that. But hopefully they'll clear that up because there is talent in Carolina. There's a spot for Baker to succeed if he's the starter because they have Christian McCaffrey, because they have Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. They've rebuilt that offensive lineup. They drafted Okongwu, I think I said how you say his name, with their first round pick. They added Austin Corbett, who did well in Carolina. He has some familiarity down there in Carolina too, because Rashard Higgins is there, Austin Corbett's there, Zane Gonzalez is down there. So there's guys that he played with in Cleveland that he can get reacquainted with, and there's going to be some familiar faces there. But Anthony, I know you brought this up in that last little statement you made, talking about what would have happened if Baker had sat out. And I have always thought about that too. Had he sat out, I think even if the Arizona game, because we already knew that he really screwed it up after the Arizona game, if he had sat out then, do the Browns look at Deshaun Watson then? Because the Browns started looking in October, which is right around the time that injury happened. Obviously, the trade deadline came and went. They didn't move Odell. They obviously settled that and cut him. That was also right around the time Miami and Houston couldn't agree to the trade for Watson. So I think the Browns probably started looking even more into it then. So who knows? Do they even still look had Baker had sat out during all that? Obviously, the game after Odell left, Baker had a solid performance against Cincinnati, but then laid an egg against New England again, and it was all up and down, and mostly down after that. So who's to say what would have happened had he sat out? I feel like Andrew Berry, Paul DePodesta, and company probably still would have been looking at the QBs and trying to upgrade, because I think they had seen the up and down inconsistency of Baker to where they knew that they weren't going to commit long-term money to him, and that they were going to probably try to look for an upgrade. So I think regardless of he had sat out during the shoulder injury, I think there was too much inconsistency, especially at the most important position in football, that they probably would have been looking for an upgrade anyways. Would they have traded for Deshaun Watson? Maybe not. Maybe they would have looked down another avenue. But obviously they went ahead and did the trade for Watson, and we're obviously still waiting on that decision of how long he's going to be suspended for. But I still think they would have looked to upgrade the position regardless.
Yeah, and maybe their solution was, all right, we'll let Baker play his 5th year, and if he does a good job, then we'll resign him. If he doesn't, then maybe we'll use a lot of the assets that we have to go after what are the top guys next year, whether it be CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or any of those other top quarterbacks that are going to be coming out next season. So you don't know what the alternate history is, but we know what the current path is for the Browns. Well, mostly at the quarterback position. So unfortunately, it's the end of Baker Mayfield. There's another name or two probably going on that quarterback jersey. The list of QBs that the Browns have had since '99. It's shocking that Baker, I guess it's shocking in itself that he lasted 4 years here. I guess that's an improvement based on, where we've been before this. But, I think that going forward, I think they'll be all right. And, they obviously have a lot of talent on this team, and the Super Bowl is the goal. We'll figure out how realistic that could be this year after we get a ruling on Watson. But, it's unfortunate the Baker thing came to an end, but now it's just time to move forward for everybody, the fans and Baker and Watson eventually, and the coaching staff and everybody involved. It's time to look forward to week 1, where I know Baker's going to be sitting on the other side, maybe on the field. We don't know, but it's just how the NFL is. You keep rolling, and we'll see. We'll see how that game turns out week 1 on September 11th.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Anthony, as I'm looking, because I'm looking at the career passing stats for the Cleveland Browns quarterbacks, and one quarterback I can't help but want to draw comparisons with Baker too, and that's the quarterback that was at the beginning of this expansion era in '99, and that's Tim Couch. You look at their stats; they're pretty similar. Couch played in 62 games. Baker played in 60 games. Baker's thrown for 3,000 more yards, 28 more touchdowns. The interception numbers are both similar. Anthony, I look at both of these guys, and I see them both. They both were on similar paths. They're both obviously both number 1 overall picks. Both were highly touted college quarterbacks coming to not a good situation both at the time. Tim Couch was obviously with an expansion team that was, mostly new, young, first and second year players. There was some veterans. And he made the most of it. He tried to, at least. Obviously, the offensive line was shaky for him. Baker, the majority of his time, the offensive line was shaky. Baker had weapons. Couch had some. Both Baker had a running game to lean on. Couch, I don't recall ever him having a solid one. William Green had his flashes. That was about it. Both had stout defenses. But I also look at how, Couch, I think, exited. It wasn't on good terms. Baker's obviously exiting on bad terms. but Couch seems more remorseful now. Do you ever think Baker will ever get to that point where he can be like Tim Couch has been in recent years and has come back and has a good relationship with the organization, has been a part of it? Obviously, Couch called some preseason games. He still contributes in some form to the Cleveland media. Do you ever think Baker will ever get to that point, or do you think Baker just will leave Cleveland in the past and never like come back and hold himself accountable for what had gone wrong the way Couch has to a degree?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I guess maybe it depends on how much this whole situation, and I mentioned earlier, like humbled Baker, and
Yeah,
and I think it's going to also rely on like how the rest of his NFL career goes. Like, he's still a younger guy. He could still have another 10, 12 years in this league, if he's able to latch on somewhere and play. Do I expect him to do all the things that, Couch did? Probably not. Or that Couch has done recently? Probably not. But, maybe, come back after his career's over. And, I'm sure there'll be, anniversaries of that playoff win and whatnot. And, sometimes you get players to show up for that maybe. And, maybe you can see an interview or two down the road. I don't expect him to be completely involved in anything having to do with the organization. But I could see a time where maybe they could sit down with him later on. But I just think it depends on how the rest of his career goes. If he's not able to get anywhere after this season, maybe it's more likely he does. But they say, like, obviously time heals a lot of things, and I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years down the road, maybe. You just never know. But I really wouldn't expect a whole lot, but that's going to be up to Baker and how he, takes this whole situation and what he does with it from here on out.
Without a doubt. It's just, it's truly the end of an era. I think, we will not talk about Baker Mayfield again until week 1 when, it's time to break down and preview the Browns versus Panthers. I think we will say that the majority of our podcast content over the last 5 years has been based on Baker Mayfield. And, we wish him and Emily well as they move on to Carolina, and we hope he does well for them, except week 1, obviously. Hopefully he has one of his worst games of his career against the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns finally win their first week 1 game since 2004. But, we wish Baker Mayfield well going forward in his NFL career, and hopefully he, revitalizes it and gets back on track and is the quarterback we thought he was going to be. Unfortunately, it won't be with the Browns, but, at the end of the day, the NFL is a business, and he just didn't do enough to be the long-term quarterback for the Browns. And Anthony, do you have any other final parting words before we get on out of here?
I have a final question for you.
Okay, lay it on me.
If Baker starts week 1 for Carolina, how many sacks does Myles Garrett have?
I did hear this I heard this on a Twitter space, and somebody goes, well, Baker, or how many sacks did Myles have against Justin Fields? And somebody was like, it's 4.5. And they were like, pencil him in for 6. And I started laughing because I did think it was funny. I haven't looked at the Panthers offensive line yet, but I would imagine Myles and these guys know Baker better than anybody. And, I'm sure Joe Woods will concoct some kind of good, strong game plan to rattle him up. So I would put him down for at least 2. I would say he gets at least 2 sacks. Looking at this offensive line, they have Iquanu, who's a first-round pick, obviously NFL debut. He's going up against Myles. They have Pat Elflein, who former Ohio State guy. Bradley Bozeman is their center. Not familiar with him. Austin Corbett. Now, he revitalized his career after he got traded to the Rams. And then they have Taylor Motton, who's another veteran. So I would say they could get a couple sacks. Miles can. Maybe Clowney gets one. Maybe one of these, young rookies, Perrion Winfrey or Alex Wright gets one on a special package. But, they know Baker. They know how he can be, how he can hold on to the ball, how he gets happy feet and wants to extend plays. But we all know Baker's not the greatest athlete. So it's going to be interesting to see what Joe Woods schemes up in that first game, because Carolina's going to be raucous crowd. Obviously, Baker Mayfield. They got all these guys on offense.
There's going to be a lot of Browns fans there. I'll guarantee you that.
Oh yeah, I was listening to the Paul Brown podcast earlier. I think Paul Brown said Zane Gonzalez was hooking him up with some tickets. So Paul Brown's coming all the way from the UK to see this. I would not be shocked if there's a lot of Browns fans there. I think one of my buddies is going there as well. So
the Browns do well when they go to Carolina anyway for the fans. So with how bad Carolina has been, I could definitely see that place maybe being 40% Browns fans, if not half.
It is going to be an interesting night, to say the least. I'm kind of disappointed it's a 1:00 game, because I feel like they better get a solid announcing crew for that, because that's going to be one of the games of the week for sure.
Especially if Watson's on the field.
Yeah, I'm not banking on that.
Yeah, me either. But
it's going to be. I'm totally banking on Jacoby Brissett versus Baker, which that right there, there's another chip on the shoulder, because Baker's going to be like, oh, so you got rid of me and you added not only Watson but Jacoby Brissett. So there's another big chip on his shoulder. It's just, that's going to be a fun game to watch. It's going to be very intriguing.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I'm ready for the season to start. I'm ready to talk about some football, and I know you and I have plenty of plans, because training camp's coming up towards the end of the month. So there's certainly going to be a lot for us to talk about.
For sure. The plan is for the podcast now, we're going to come back once we get the official ruling on Deshaun Watson's suspension. And then after that, we will kick it into gear and start previewing, position battles, everything that's going on at camp. Hopefully we get some guests on here. So everybody stay tuned for that. Thank you for riding with us. I know we haven't done anything since May, which we typically do, just because we're not going to be, and I think Anthony, you'll attest to this, we're not going to be the types that, do filler content and just keep coming on here and talking about the Watson stuff, just because it's too much. It's too much content to do over the summer. We like to give ourselves a break for sure during the summer months to recharge the batteries and get ready for the next season.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not gonna, have a Twitter space every day and talk about stuff and do all this kind of stuff. So, there's certainly going to be plenty for us to talk about here very shortly.
Absolutely. You guys can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony Jokey. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack McCurry08, and follow the Dogland at the Dogland on both Twitter and Facebook. And for that, until we get on out of here, until next time, go Browns.